Welcome back to the Chasing Tone podcast. I'm Travis.
I'm Max.
I'm Brian.
Whatever.
And we're joined again with Frank Falbo of Falbo Guitars. Yeah.
And the crowd goes mild.
Goes mild. Yeah. Dude, there's a trumpet player around town that if he was half as good as he thought he was, dude, he'd be Chris Bodie. You know what I mean? But everybody around town calls him Mild Davis.
Mild Davis.
That's terrible.
Wow.
Awesome.
Let's hope he's not watching.
I don't think he knows. I don't think anybody calls him that to his face.
Until now.
Yeah. Right. It's awesome. I'm going to leave that one alone because I could go on so many more stories about this dude. But podcast topic.
From Aaron Christensen.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Do you want me to read the whole thing or just kind of give the long and short of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Podcast topic. Discuss the difference between live tone, bedroom tone, and studio tone. For me, playing is all about live performance, so I have all my gear set up to deliver sounds at work live. My tone isn't the holy grail, but it works for our music and holds place in a mix with 4 or 5 other instruments and 4 vocalists. Church, you know. When I get home, my settings sound like garbage. Likewise, I've found that creating tones at home never works once you hit the stage. That sound of the mix and the room are just too different. Something that's full and detailed at home sounds flubby and nasty and barely cuts live unless you're louder than everyone else. Something that sounds thin and dull at home jumps out and owns in a mix without stepping on the other instruments. And recording is sort of uncharted water for me. Nice job, Max.
Oh.
I'm sure a whole other set of tone variables come into play there as well. Tell me about it. Man,
I would like point to like the opening track on the podcast where you were saying that, like, when you isolate that guitar tone, you're like, ugh.
right.
But in the mix, it fit perfectly.
Yeah, especially when the band comes in. And that's more of the recording, thing. But he hit the nail. The guy obviously knows what he's talking about. Obviously has that experience. Because, I saw you, Frank, shaking your head like, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
The guy totally gets it. What works, he pretty much explained it for us, but what works at home, I see guys do that. They're like, I'm going to get my tone at home.
Right.
And then they go to the gig and it's like, this sounds terrible.
Yeah,
right.
Totally different.
No, it's a completely different environment. It's like, trying to borrow a NASCAR car and be like, this car's awesome. I can't wait to drive it to work.
Right.
And it's like, no, I hate this car. Like, I want the leather interior, the air conditioning, and all the rest of that stuff. Yeah, exactly, right? So it's they're different functions. They're performing a completely different, task, and it's, there's several things that you can break it down to. One is frequency content, where
and that's what I was going to bring up.
Right, where I'm playing by myself, I want all of these frequencies because I want to experience this full, rich sound. And when you're playing with other people in a mix, whether it live or a studio, in a mix, all these other instruments are occupying these other spaces. And if you try to occupy all of those same spaces, then everything gets clogged up and it doesn't sound good, and you can't really pick out, what the guitar is doing. So you tend to narrow.
Cloudy and clumsy.
Right.
So you tend to focus your frequency content.
The one thing I've noticed, the main frequency that I've always fought, is I play in a band with a guy, a bass player, plays a 5-string bass. He's got a 15-inch subwoofer and a 410 cabinet. There's a lot of tones happening on his instrument, and I noticed that I was playing an amp. It was a Rivera 5512, but I put it in a new cabinet with a 15-inch speaker. Yeah. And I noticed that tone that worked well with other bands I've been playing in did not work well in the band with this bass player because there was a competition there. And I think
over each other frequency.
Yeah, and when I'm at home, man, I really love that bass frequency. When I'm playing low volumes by myself, it sounds so warm and full. But when you get on stage, there's such a competition there that it just sounds like mud.
It does. It gets all muddy.
Yeah, and so the other part of it is dynamics. Something that's compressed and tight might sound good at home, but it also might sound good in a recording because everything is going to get squished and squashed anyways in the mastering process.
But be lost live.
Right, and needs something that's compressed and tight, like you said. It's totally lost in a live environment. And then the final difference between all these things is the fact that even though some of the things that you might do in the studio might cross over to either bedroom or live, live, you're literally manipulating the air that's in front of you, including human beings that are occupying said space.
Right.
And so it's not even, there's the whole frequency content thing, but it's
and
like
the stage you're on.
Right. You're
That's what I hate
figuring
about
out
sound
what's,
checks.
Yeah, where am I not in the first row, but where am I by the time I get to the 10th row?
Yeah,
right?
there's a country bar in Indianapolis. You're very familiar with it. You've played it way more than I have. It's huge. It's like a skating rink or something,
Right.
you know.
Really?
And they always make you sound check at like 4 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah.
to
You start
an
at
empty
9 or
bar
10, and it's
Right.
pointless. Completely pointless.
Right.
because you
Everything
get up.
changes.
Yes, because you get bodies in the room and occupying space, and then.
Right.
Like you said, it's pointless because even your monitor mix changes. And
Yeah,
everything.
your settings on, like for me, the settings on pedals change, the amp setting changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything, which throws the sound guy off. And by that, you're like,
Yeah.
so
And
I
you've played
wasted
there a
my
ton.
time. Huh?
You've played there a ton.
Yeah.
You
It's
know?
a fun place. It's like one of the only country bars that
Well, it's-
house a lot of people.
It's
you know?
it's the prestige bar.
Yeah, I mean, it's
here.
like when big name acts come in town, like before
That's where
they're
they
big
play.
enough to go to a place,
Yeah.
they go there because it holds a couple thousand people. or
Yeah,
whatever.
Nice.
yeah.
So
But and something I want to back up a little bit when we're talking about bass frequencies getting lost. That's probably, I can't speak for you here, I guess, even though I'm going to. That's probably why you put bright switches on a lot of your pedals.
well, and EQ.
Right.
I like 3-band EQ because that way you can, like, let's say you like your Plexi drive or your whatever, your Tube Screamer, but it worked at sound check or it worked at home, and now you're in this club and you're like, it just sounds so nasally.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's just dial that out,
Right.
you know?
Right. Sometimes that's not just a presence control. That's not just a
Right.
straight up tone knob.
Right.
In the middle of your tube screamer.
Right.
Right.
That's not it always.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I really don't have too much more to contribute because this, like I said, this guy obviously knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Do you have any problems with your super?
Only when I play it at home. Because it makes the neighbors mad.
Well, I've noticed there's a whole theory that I kind of go back and forth with a friend of mine, and it'd be nice to get somebody that's a speaker expert on the show because he says that it's all about how much air you move, and he has a theory that 410s is 40 inches of air to where 115 is only 15 inches of air, and it's like, and I kind of see where he's coming from a little bit, but I don't know. To me,
Yeah.
the tone is so different that it's kind
Yeah,
of
if you're strictly talking about air movement, then you can make some comparisons to like 4 small fans versus 1 large fan blade.
Right.
And so there's a certain amount of push behind a larger blade, but yet what's happening is by the time you get 10 feet away from the amp, or the fans in this case, it's this dispersion, right? So if I push really hard in this much space, then I have this resistance that's coming out in front of me. If I have multiple drivers, or like a line array and a PA cabinet,
Right, yeah.
right. If I have multiple smaller drivers and they're not without a lot of excursion, then it's like I'm reducing that SPL, but I'm getting a better transfer by the time you're further away. Now
Right.
mix that with the fact that we like how guitar 12s sound.
Right.
And all bets are off because it's like, but I gotta have a 12 because the 10
Because
just
that's-
doesn't
that's-
sound. Yeah, it
right.
just doesn't have the punch, right?
Right.
I mean, I play 15s a lot too in my past. I've liked them on guitar.
And it's not a bass
You know.
thing; it's a depth.
No,
thing.
it's right. It's like exactly. It's
Yeah.
this tubby,
Yeah.
Tubby.
dimensional sound.
But Max let me. I did this. I've never liked super reverbs indoors. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And it's just personal preference. But something was wrong with my amp, and I was doing this outdoor festival, and I really needed an amp, number one, and then I really needed one with tremolo on it. So, Max let me borrow his super, and that was some of the best tone I'd ever had. And I didn't even use any pedals, just a Telecaster into a cranked up super.
Yeah.
There's why. It's 'cause it's
I knew it.
Telecaster.
I was setting you up for that one, dude.
And I know guys who love those amps, right? And without getting too into past experiences, would say, let's take that super reverb to NAMM.
Oh no.
And it's like, whoa, because it's just a good Fender sound or whatever.
Right.
And it's like,
Especially at 70 decibels.
right. Well, and when I'm fighting, right? So now I'm fighting all this noise, right? So, we didn't really touch on this with live sound, but a loud bar, an active bar of talking
is 100 decibels.
Totally different experience than a club scene where people are kind of there to listen to the music. Your mix is going to be different for that too, right? But it's an open back design, completely different. You can be sitting there in a room and be like, but I like this open back amp better than I like this one. It's like, you know what? But at NAMM, I got to get this sound to go right there to those people, but then I also have to get it to follow off before it gets into the hallway and the noise police come by and say you're too loud in your booth.
Punch 'em right in the
right?
face.
And not to make this a commercial, but those Port City cabs, they do a great job of what you're saying.
What do they do?
Yeah, they're very directional, and they have a nice fall off.
Yeah.
And I use the oversized 212, and I find that it doesn't kill you off stage.
Right.
On stage it's huge, it's full, it's
Right. right
at me, but
Yep.
it doesn't kill you off stage.
Yeah, that's exactly, and that's all speaker cabinet design stuff. But
Yeah.
it plays into this discussion that you're having about live, and because sometimes it can be like the magic bullet for you could be the cabinet that you choose to bring to the live gig.
Right.
And you're at home and you're creating these sounds and you're creating them on a close back, close back 1x12 or something, and then you take your 4x12 to the gig, and then maybe it's that the tones are more similar. You don't have to really do a lot of changes because you've just completely changed the way you're manipulating the air.
Right. And then the best part about it is, as the player, sometimes we could care less about how it sounds compared to how it feels.
Right.
And to me, that's where the movement of air comes. And something you've always kind of brought to my attention is like, that's the problem with cab sims.
I think so, yeah.
And and Brian even says, if the guy out there can make a cab sim and get that feeling of moving air, then that's the product.
Right.
And you do it by capacitors. I don't know.
No.
You just riffing.
Yeah.
Speaking of bedroom tone, I got a new amp. I did.
What'd you get, Richard?
What'd you get, Richard? But no, I had this old Epiphone 339 that I literally never played.
Yeah.
Never played it. And there's one of those Marshall Class 5s.
Oh,
Have you
cool.
seen these? But yeah, I was talking to, kind of funny story. I was talking to Dave.
I love that.
Yeah, that is a funny story.
All right, and that's it.
Moving on.
But no, I was talking to Dave about trading him this guitar, and he was like, "Yeah, so yours the Ultra or the Pro?" And I was like, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, was it coil tapped?" I had no idea until I was playing it later that day to find out, and I forgot. I was just playing. My son walks up, grabs the tone knob or volume knob, and just goes. I was like, yeah, "It's coil tapped." Yeah, my son figured it out for me.
Yeah. Already smarter than you.
Yeah, let's face it, that doesn't take much.
Right. How old is he?
15 months.
That's about right.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. You know what drives me nuts? One of my pet peeves is people who always say that their kid is so smart.
Right.
They're like, "Oh, he's so smart." I'm like, dude, he still defecates in his pants.
Right.
It's like, let's wait till he's like 3 or 4.
Right. I've seen that crayon drawing of an elephant. It doesn't look anything like an elephant.
Right?
Okay. He stinks.
Yeah, he's terrible.
Maybe with some practice, but
It's
right
like-
now,
Yeah, he's
it's not going in an art museum.
right. Let's wait till he can read at least. You know what I mean? That's one of my pet peeves. So what I always do is I always make the joke, like, we have one of those pack and plays, and it's like a mesh screen, and he'd put his face up against it,
Yeah.
and like smash his face.
It's
And
the
I'd
best.
take a picture, and I'd send it to my wife. I'd be like, "He's so smart."
Yeah.
Or anytime he does something that a kid would do, falls down, I'd say, "He's so graceful. He's
Yeah.
so smart."
Oh man.
But all right, this one I have some experience with, but I really don't have a lot. Pat Cross writes, in the early stages of episode 52, you guys were discussing the comparison between high-dollar cables, El Cheapos, and coat hanger cables. That discussion got me wondering what the dealio is with wireless systems.
Well, they eliminate cables
Right.
and
Right.
then allow you to walk around.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That's basically the deal with them. Right?
Yeah. That's the deal. You spend.
Wireless.
You pay for goods and services. You get the goods, and then you use their services. It's a really simple
Economic
procedure.
thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happens. And then, but then you buy one less cable. So you're saving money there.
Right.
But the one thing I will say is I do have one of those Line 6 G30s.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Yeah, you know.
Pretty good.
And everybody was hating on me. They're like, why get the G30, bro? Why not get the G50 or the G1?
I know, those numbers are higher.
Yeah, exactly. And so is the price.
Economics, that's what you're talking about.
It is. You see, he gets it.
He gets it.
He knows
so
the
smart.
score.
But
You should take a picture of this into my mom. He's so smart.
Yeah, he's
But-
coming along.
I don't think there will ever be a time where I need to be more than 30 feet from my amplifier for the gigs I'm playing.
Well, it depends. I mean, if you're playing the 80s rock gig, you've got to go out in the crowd.
Right.
Walk to the back of the building, you know.
I can't
taken
remember.
care of to keep your mullet out of the way.
Right.
And
I do got a mullet starter kit,
Yeah.
you know?
What were the
You know what
80s?
wirelesses are really good for? Like being that annoying guitarist who's gonna go back to the board and tell the sound guy how he's
Right.
doing it wrong.
Right.
Let's
Or,
monitor.
or the guy that stands on the table and plays behind his head.
That's
I'm
fine.
sorry. I don't like it.
That's fine.
You're
What's
okay
your problem?
with that?
Hey man, you take your baggage, leave it at the door. You know?
You're okay with this?
Of course, do what you want to do. You might
Yeah.
not get hired back, but do it.
Yeah.
Take your sunglasses off.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, so there's cheap wirelesses and there's good ones. That's all there is to it. You know, just like with cables, some are good, some are bad, some sound better than others. With digital wireless, it's kind of like we finally got to the point where we're getting a good sound from point A to point B.
Right.
Yet there's now a little bit of latency involved, and so that can become a thing that now this when you talk about this way things feel, latency is a big one for me.
Oh,
there's
yeah, that's
there
gotta
are
be
people
the biggest.
right. There are people
time.
who can't tell. And then you'll talk to some engineer types who are like, but it's 10 milliseconds. It's just like being 10 feet away from your amp. It's not a big deal. And I'm like, no, because it's when I'm 10 feet away from my amp, it sounds
Then
like it's 20 feet
20
away.
feet,
Right.
yes.
It's like, so I know, I mean, our ears are, everything about us is so
Right.
tuned in to being able, whether you want to go back to, evolution, intelligent design, whatever, it's like at some point in time, we used these two things to go, there's a deer right over there. Like,
Right.
I can
Right.
tell he's here.
Or a
Why is
bear.
he? Why is he not here? Why is it not there? Why is it not up in the tree?
Right.
And what's the time difference between this ear and that ear? But somehow when that image comes in, I
We know
go,
where it's at.
right there. Right. Boom. And
That latency screws me up a lot. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially recording.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
If I'm going through the effects and monitoring
Yeah.
the sound.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I isolated cabinet somewhere.
Right.
My timing, it's so screwed
that's right.
up.
Yeah, you got to have like some direct monitor.
Yeah,
Right.
You have to do it. Yeah.
If you're going to do that, but it's a short latency, but by engineering standards nowadays, but it's long for what we do. So I think I'm not speaking for Line 6, but it's maybe they've improved things, whatever. But we're talking north of like 10 milliseconds, 12 milliseconds on some of the earlier digital products, and then they keep getting better. And so I
Right.
don't know where they are now, but I've did some tests and I can sense about 3 milliseconds or less. That's when I can begin to.
That's where you're
Yeah,
physically
yeah. That's
tuned
when
to.
I can tell the difference.
Huh.
And there's different ways we ran those tests, but the other thing that it does, and sometimes people don't realize this, is if you are doing this near the amp, looking for that feedback loop, right? Literally 10, 12 milliseconds or whatever. And we talked about live versus, this all ties in, and I'll try to make it quick, right?
No, you're fine.
But the latency, I mean, sound waves have a distance to them before
Of
they
course.
fully develop. Bass
Right.
sound waves are longer. When we talked about live sound, the bass amplifier, there are some sound waves that are 6 or 12 feet long before they fully cycle. On a recorded music, in your earbuds right here, all that stuff is immediate. The length of the sound wave is now become irrelevant, but it's not irrelevant in the room, and that's why 5th row can be different than 10th row, can be different than 15th
Right.
row.
Right.
With feedback in front of a guitar amp, trying to get like that sound, that biofeedback loop between those two things, sometimes 10 milliseconds, 12 milliseconds can make the difference of it not happening, because there's some parts of that sound wave that is out of phase and I don't mean like where it sounds thin, but I'm saying the sound wave itself is out of phase with the feedback loop you're trying to create,
Right.
and then other frequencies are in phase. And if I shift that time balance, it's the same as, not the same, but it's like if I moved away from the amp. So that
Right.
sweet spot in front of the amp,
I could see that.
where
Yeah.
it goes,
I've never.
is different.
Max?
Max literally just
I've
had
been
an
putting on
epileptic
screensaver.
seizure or something.
Did you
Screensaver
lose
mode.
time?
Yeah, I just watched the ball game.
Or the snake? Or the pipes?
Yeah, pretty much. Never-ending pipe.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Frank.
No, it was. Oh, it was time.
Yeah, it's like,
That's
Yeah.
awesome. He said, "Oh no,
Yeah.
that's perfect."
Yeah, like
That's fine.
C-3PO. Shut him up or shut him down.
I was thinking, I was like, do I have anything to
Right.
contribute to this? No, I don't.
Yeah, I like pancakes.
No, I don't think I'm near as sensitive as you are to that latency.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I noticed it like whenever we were sound checking the other night.
Yeah.
I went out and I played just during the sound check, and yeah, I noticed big time. But I was,
But
20
that's
feet off
compound,
stage.
right? And that's compounded by the actual physical distance.
Right.
You're not used to being that far away from your rig,
Right.
so the amount of time it takes the sound to get to you is the secondary part of latency.
Right.
But that would be the same whether you had a cable or not. So really, you're just
Exactly.
compounding the 10 or 12 milliseconds on top of that.
Right.
Um,
I'll tell you.
I know when I played at church, I used to use a wireless system, and I'd go to the sound booth and play. I never did that.
Were you
but-
using
It was
UHF?
forever.
But I mean, it was like you're always
Yeah.
playing half a second behind your
Yeah, yeah.
So it
Oh,
was
yeah.
awesome.
No, I would do it. I would play ahead. If I was doing that, I would always jump out ahead to try to make it so that the people on stage
See,
were
I
still
think-
hearing me
Or
in
what you could do
time.
is delay everybody else.
Yeah,
Right.
you're like you guys are behind, you guys are Russian. You're
Yeah.
Russian.
Right.
And they're like, no, we're not.
No, we're
No,
not.
we're
Yeah.
totally not.
Yeah.
But-
So the bigger point is don't mistake latency for a tonal shift. So right, this is important.
But pay attention now.
Right, you're like, I tried 5 different cables and I found my favorite, and then I tried this wireless, and the wireless is between the second favorite cable and the 5th, or whatever. It's right in here, and it's like, yeah, there's part of that that's becoming a component, even if the frequency content is all there. It's that becomes a secondary issue. Is the
Yeah.
latency.
And like I said, like you said earlier, becomes a feel
Yeah.
thing. Now, when you were you talking digital, or were you talking was it
Right.
UHF?
Back in your day.
I was teasing.
Oh.
I never did that.
Oh, I've done that. I thought you were being serious.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
I
I've
have
totally-
played in the booth before, but I just ran direct with little
Yeah.
caveat
okay.
later.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And then listen
I've
to the mix. and-
Yeah. No, I've gone
Yeah.
up to the booth to make sure the sound is right or something like that, and I'm playing it.
Yeah.
You're playing along, and
Didn't
it is.
one of my
Well, I mean, yeah,
relatives
I've
run
messed
sound?
around, but not like
Yeah.
actually at a church, like in the middle.
Yeah, no,
I've
no.
tested
This would be
it,
for
but-
practice.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyways, go
Crazy story here.
Mm.
Frank and I know somebody mutual. He's a family member of mine.
ahead. All right.
Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he sent me a message. He was like, and true story, his name's Michael Jackson.
Right.
But
Yeah.
he was like, "How do you know Michael Jackson?" I was like, "Well, he's a relative. He's like a second cousin or something, you
Yeah.
know." And he was like, "He ran sound for our church in Chicago."
Right.
Yeah,
In Illinois.
so-
Yeah.
So crazy, man.
Yep. Small world.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, Michael Jackson ran sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
That must have been a thriller.
Yeah.
That was a great
Knee slapper. No, I'll turn it into a knee slapper.
Yeah. He looks nothing like the famous Michael
Yeah.
Jackson.
Well, he's dead.
Right.
Hopefully your relative's still alive.
What'd you say?
Hopefully your relative's still alive. at this
Yes. My relative is still alive that
Yes.
I know of.
Yes.
But
And in good working order.
yeah, he's but no, small world. Trying to think if we have anything here that's kind of shorter, or if we should save it for a whole new episode here.
So, Frank, how does electricity work?
Yeah.
point. See, there's this kite with a key on it.
Right. And that's where it started. Right. And ever since
now got
then,
that.
it's been cycling up through the earth back up to the
So
clouds.
somewhere there's a lot of kites.
Yeah.
There's one
That's
large
true.
kite. The
Yeah.
government doesn't want you to know about it.
Let's do another one because
We do lunch.
yeah, we could probably do lunch too. But oh wait, somebody gave Max some props.
Oh yeah, they did.
Somebody said
About his singing voice.
Yeah,
I know I didn't write that myself.
We should
Yeah.
get Max to sing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your mom also wants to know if a 12-foot cable sounds different than a 6
But it says, yeah, which reminds me, you guys once mentioned that Max's singing voice is on the show, so I
Yes.
looked him up. I was freaking blown away. Max has a serious gift. Guitar? What's guitar? That voice is where it's at. I'd buy his album in a second if it ever appears. Incredible talent there.
Which is funny
How about
because at one point, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, you mentioned something about Max finishing.
Yeah, I was
the
producing a record of Max's, and he paid for the everything. He paid for the engineer. He paid for the time. I think he got 3
Personnel
songs.
change and
I think he got
Good
3
stuff.
songs tracked, and then
I just hated my producer, so I never finished it.
really is that why?
No.
Yeah,
You mean I'm sure you mean engineer.
No, the band broke up and all that stuff. I just never finished it.
yeah.
Yeah, which
And if we want to bring it all back home, really, we were talking earlier about live tone versus like bedroom tone and those kinds of things. You know, your voice, right? There's your singing voice, but then there's talking to you. And,
Yeah.
You know, it's never as good one way or the other. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Can't understand anything he's saying.
Right. His singing voice sounds so amazing, but then he talks. You know,
Yeah.
no.
It's like Susan Tedeschi's the same way. I can listen to her sing all day long. Listen to an interview with her. I'm like, please.
you better hope Daryl Trucks doesn't hear this.
What's his name? Daryl Trucks and John Oates, I think.
Yeah,
Was a group from the.
No, I say I know a guy.
First of
I
all,
think he's from
dummy,
Mar-
it's pronounced Darrell.
Darrell. Dummy. That's my new word I've been using is dummy. Who
Yeah,
calls
it's a-
people
it's so-
dummy?
it's adorable.
I would rather be called like a
right.
dumb
Some
A than
very
dummy.
pejorative,
You know,
yeah.
dummy's like
Yeah.
straight up like.
Oh, it hits too close to home.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
condescending.
Yeah.
Condescending is when you say something that's sorry.
Right.
Oh, is that what it means? I didn't know.
Yeah.
But no, Max and I were going to put a band together, and I said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, put a band together," and then he never did anything about it.
Mm.
Remember that?
Wow.
That wasn't all me.
Huh? Dude, it's totally all you. I'm running 2 other bands.
Mm.
Come on. I
And-
told you, I said, let's do it. I said, let's set it up.
So we are going Jerry Springer.
We are going to Jerry. But
Sorry, Dad.
sorry, Dad. No, let's set it up. I'm telling you, the audience is there.
We'll sell tons of tickets.
I know.
Yeah.
Tickets. We're doing shows.
Yeah, no, you're selling
out.
iTunes downloads to everybody
There we
watching
go.
right now.
That way I can get my 34 cents per track.
You getting that much?
Huh?
Wow.
Yeah, well, my distributor's pretty good.
Mm.
Anyway, if you guys have any questions or comments, leave them down below
And YouTube.
in the YouTube comments, or shoot us an email, podcast@wamplerpedals.com. Oh, I thought you were getting ready to say something. You just stretch it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, way to go
you see,
out.
that's the authority he has. He sits up, and
Right.
everybody's.
Right.
But
Yeah, it's like,
Whatever.
he moves.
he moved.
He moved.
But check us out on Instagram and Facebook, Chasing Tone Podcast. For Max, Frank, and Brian, I'm Travis. Thank you so much for listening / watching.